In this lesson, we're going to begin the process of unwrapping the weapon. All right, so let's go ahead and get started by unwrapping the main part of the frame here. So with this, the first thing that we need to remember is that we've already set up our smoothing groups. So just to kind of show you what that looks like, let's turn on the isolate mode with just the game weapon, the low poly game weapon selected. If we deselect away from that, you can see that we have these hard edges and we've got this nice silhouette. We can see where different creases are going to be on the weapon itself. And this is very important because these are going to serve as hard edges and they're going to collect that data from the normal map. Now, because we've set up these smoothing groups, we need to make sure that we create edge loops or UV seams along those edges. That's very important. Anytime that you have an edge that is separated by a smoothing group, okay, this is called a smoothing split, you must have a UV split or a UV seam along that edge, okay? So the way that we're going to go about doing this is we're going to select our object here, and we're going to work on the main part of the gun first. We're going to add in the unwrap UVW modifier, so you can just type in UN, and that should show up there. And there's unwrap UVW. Now you'll notice that we get all of these green lines, and these are all of our seams that are on the weapon. And these were created when we first started creating our different objects, okay? And these seams come up automatically. Now they make a big mess. If we come in and we open up our UV editor and we take a look at that, you can see that we really can't make any sense out of this whatsoever. And it needs to look like the different parts of our weapon. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to start separating out those different pieces. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller just so I can start working in here. And we need to remember that we want to get those seams that are along smoothing groups first. Okay, we need to make sure that we're separating it out that way. So looking at this, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and go to polygon mode. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off this ignore back facing so that way I can select all the polygons all the way through the model if I need to. And more importantly, I'm going to be selecting polygons based on the smoothing groups that we've already set up. This can make things go a lot easier. We can select by smoothing groups by going to our selection rollout in the unwrap UVW modifier. And we can say select by smoothing groups, which is right here. Now, you'll first need to tell it what smoothing group you want to select. So we'll say smoothing group 1. Now, the only downside to this is that whenever you select by smoothing group, it selects all of the polygons that are on that smoothing group. And this is okay. It's not a big issue. We just want to be able to select those and work on those individually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select by smoothing group like this, but then I'm going to come in and I'm going to start deselecting some of these faces. So hold down Alt and we're going to deselect the faces that are in the barrel of the weapon. Okay, we're going to go around to the other side. Okay, looking at all of these. These are fine with what I have selected. I don't want these, however. So let's go ahead and deselect those. We could go to the left view and do a marquee selection if you like, but I'm already here, so I might as well just go ahead and deselect that. Okay. There we go. So we have all of those selected. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate those out. Now this can be done very easily by coming up here to the top and going to mapping and flatten mapping. And then we're just going to leave everything as default and we'll hit OK on that. And you'll see that all of those parts have been separated out and they've been flattened. Now it's been flattened based on an angle of the polygons, and most of the time this does a pretty good job, but there are going to be some things that we'll need to set up again. Now the reason that I've done this is just to make it easier for me to select those clusters, because we're not going to stop with a flattened mapping. That doesn't give us the result we want. It doesn't create an optimized texture for us. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to separate all of this outside of the main 0 to 1 space in this UV space here. We want all of our UVs to fit inside of there whenever we're finished. So I'm just going to move them outside. So with your move tool, you can go ahead and hold shift and you can drag those outside of that with those clusters selected there. Now what I'll do is I'll come in and I'll select these clusters by their element, okay, and you'll see that I have these selected here, and that looks pretty good. Happy with the way that is. Looking at where everything comes together, you can see that all of this comes together, but there's this problem right here. You can see here that these pieces right here have they have a seam and they don't really match up, and so what we want to do is we want to select the way we want that to match up. So what is going to be on this UV cluster? Now really quickly, if we take a look at that, we could go ahead and hide the UV. Well, I don't want to see the seams. Let's turn off the seams really quickly. This is all the way down at the bottom. You can turn off that display. And I just want to see what it looks like without my UVs. And all of that belongs on a single smoothing group. So I don't have to worry about the seams where they are. Okay, I can go ahead and just create one. So let's go in and let's create a seam that looks natural. So we're going to open up the UV editor again. Let's select by polygon and by element, so it selects that entire thing. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do a planar projection. Let's go ahead and click on that, but then let's do a planar projection in the X direction. You'll see how that lays that out, makes it nice and straight, and looks really good. Now the only problem that we have with this is that we have to worry about its stretch. So it's been confined into this area and it's been scaled to touch all of those edges there on the UV space, but it stretches it out and it doesn't look right. So how do we check that? Well, we can do that by coming up here and clicking on checker pattern, and that will apply the checker pattern to our object. Now you could also apply a UV material to it, and that will help as well. Okay, so either way will work fine. I like to use a material with the checker pattern on it because I have different designs that are on there too, and it can really help me out with my UVing. But we'll go ahead and we'll work with this just for right now, just to kind of show you how this works. So it looks like it's being squashed in the vertical direction. So here in the UV space, what that means is it's been elongated. And so what I can do is actually scale it in the vertical direction. And let's go ahead and turn off our planar map projection, and let's scale it down, and notice how those squares become a little more square as we squash that down. So there we go. So now we don't have any stretch, we don't have any squashing going on in that. And if we really wanted to, we could actually come in and we could do a little bit of a relax on that, and we'll relax by polygon angles, and that will bring those polygons out. Now you'll notice how it started twisting, and it doesn't look like anything that we had before. The reason for that is because this UV cluster is flipped the wrong way. If any time it starts to twist like that, all you have to do is right click on it and mirror horizontal or vertical, whichever you want to do. But in this case, I'm going to mirror horizontal, and I'm going to say start relax again. Notice how it hardly moved, but what it does is it brings out all the polygons and it unfolds them in such a way that we can see exactly how that works there. Now there are a couple of polygons that we missed up here at the top, so I want to go ahead and select those just like that. Actually, you know what? Let's keep those together just like that. Nice little set there. Now if at any time you've missed polygons, just simply come in, do another planar projection, and it's going to flip it around again. That's okay. Make sure you hit X on that, and then let's right click, mirror horizontal, and then start to relax on that. There we go. All right, so now we've got these nice squares coming in here. They look really good. Okay, no weird stretching or anything like that. Now we need to do it on the other side. So what I'll do now at this point is go ahead and turn off planar projection, grab my move tool, and I'll just pull this up out of the way. I know that that's finished, and then I can start working on the rest of these pieces. So in the next lesson, we're going to go a little bit faster. We've talked about the workflow that I'm going to be using for this, and I'm going to start piecing all of this together and breaking down these different pieces one by one, just so that way you can follow along. Now, your UVs may not look exactly like mine, but you should be able to follow along in some form or fashion. All right, so I'll see you in the next lesson.